The golden stones of Valletta glowed under the setting sun, yet inside the small apartment above Merchant Street, the air was heavy. 16-year-old Luca paced across the cracked tiles, his fists clenched, his heart racing. His father, Matteo, sat rigidly at the wooden table, his voice sharp as the clash of steel. "You think you can defy me, Luca? You live under my roof, you follow my rules." The boy's eyes burned. For months, Luca had felt invisible in his own home, his ideas dismissed, his dreams ridiculed. That evening, the silence between father and son had finally broken into thunder. Matteo rose suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. His face, lined with years of toil as a dock worker, hardened into something Luca could no longer recognize. "You are no longer welcome here." The words struck harder than any blow. Luca froze, his breath caught in his throat. Outside, church bells rang, carrying through the narrow streets like a cruel reminder of the world still moving while his own crumbled. With a trembling hand, he grabbed his small backpack from beneath the bed, stuffing it with whatever he could reach. His sister Sophia watched from the doorway, tears brimming in her eyes, but too afraid to speak. When the front door slammed behind him, Valletta's streets seemed colder than ever. The warm glow of lanterns did little to soften the truth. Luca was alone, cast adrift in a city that no longer felt like home. He walked aimlessly past the harbor, the salty wind stinging his face. Every corner echoed with voices of strangers, yet not a single one spoke to him. The once familiar streets had become a maze of shadows. And as night drew in, Luca realized the true weight of his father's words. He was not just without a home. He was without a family. The night deepened over Valletta, and the once lively cafes and bustling market stalls fell silent. Luca wandered past St. John's Co-Cathedral, its imposing walls looming like silent judges. His stomach growled, but he had no money, no shelter, no plan. He slipped into a narrow alley where the shadows swallowed the light. Rats scurried past, and the distant echo of laughter from a tavern cut into his loneliness. He sank onto the cold stone steps, pulling his backpack close, clutching it like a shield. Above him, a shutter creaked open. An old woman peered down, shook her head, and slammed it shut. Even the windows seemed to reject him. Hours crawled by. The city that had always been his playground now felt hostile. He tried to sleep, but the cobblestones were merciless, and the wind carried whispers of a home he no longer had. And then, just as his eyes began to close, a shadow moved at the end of the alley. Someone was watching him. The figure stepped closer, a tall man with a weathered face and a fisherman's cap. Luca tensed, unsure whether to run or stay. The man stopped a few feet away, his eyes sharp yet curious. "You lost, boy?" the man asked in a deep Maltese accent. Luca hesitated, his throat dry. I don't have anywhere to go." The fisherman studied him for a moment, then shrugged. "Not safe out here at night. Valletta hides many dangers." Without another word, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Luca's heart sank. For a moment, he thought he had found a lifeline, only to realize he was still adrift. But before despair could take hold, the man's voice drifted back through the shadows. "If you can keep up, follow me." Luca hurried after the fisherman, stumbling over uneven stones. They wound their way down towards Marsamxett Harbor, where the scent of salt and fish filled the air. Boats rocked gently, their lanterns casting golden ripples across the water. The fisherman led him to a modest hut near the docks. Inside, the smell of grilled fish lingered, and a single oil lamp flickered against the walls. The man set down a basket of nets and finally faced Luca. "Name's Elias." "And you?" "Luca," the boy whispered. Elias nodded, pulling out a piece of bread and handing it to him. Luca devoured it, the taste of simple kindness overwhelming after hours of hunger. But even as his stomach eased, doubt gnawed at him. Who was this stranger? And why had he chosen to help? Morning came with the cry of gulls and the shimmer of sunlight across the harbor. Elias introduced Luca to his wife, Maria, and their daughter, Elena. Their home was small, the walls weathered by sea air, yet it radiated warmth. Maria placed a bowl of soup in front of him.
Eat, child.
You look like you haven't slept in days. Elena, a girl close to Luca's age, eyed him curiously but said nothing. Her silence was not unkind. It was cautious, like the sea before a storm. As the days passed, Luca found himself helping Elias mend nets and clean the boats. The family asked little of him, offering shelter without questions. Yet in every kindness, Luca felt a pang of guilt. He was an outsider, a boy rejected by his own blood. Did he deserve this newfound comfort? One evening, as the family gathered around the fire, Maria told stories of her childhood in Gozo, of hardships endured and joys found in the simplest things. Luca listened, his heart aching. For the first time since leaving home, he felt included, as if their laughter had carved out a space for him. But with that warmth came a gnawing fear. He remembered Sophia's tearful eyes when he left, the silence of his father's final words. Could he ever face them again? Or was this borrowed life destined to crumble? Outside, waves crashed against the shore, whispering secrets only the sea could keep. A week later, Elias took Luca to Marsak's Lock, the fishing village famed for its colorful boats. The market buzzed with voices, the scent of salt and spices thick in the air. But as clouds gathered, a storm swept in suddenly. The sea churned violently, tossing boats against one another. Elias and Luca rushed to secure the nets, their hands raw against the ropes. "Hold fast, boy," Elias shouted over the roar of the wind. Luca clung to the ropes, his muscles burning, his mind flashing back to his father's rejection. For the first time, he realized he was fighting not just for survival but for belonging. When the storm finally eased, the harbor lay battered, yet still standing. And so was he. That night, as the family sat around the table, Elena finally spoke. "Why were you on the streets, Luca?" The question struck him like lightning. He lowered his eyes, struggling for words. "My father," he said, "I wasn't welcome." Silence fell. Elias's weathered face softened. Maria's eyes filled with quiet sympathy. Elena reached across the table, her hand brushing his. "You don't need blood to be family," she said gently. The words sank deep, stirring something fragile yet fierce within him. But in the quiet of his thoughts, a shadow remained. Could he truly replace the family he had lost? Weeks passed, and Valletta's streets began to feel less threatening. Luca found rhythm in the fishing life, his hands growing calloused, his heart steadier. Yet every night, when he closed his eyes, Matteo's voice echoed in the dark. One evening, as he returned from the docks, he spotted a familiar figure across the marketplace. His father. Matteo's eyes locked onto his, surprise flashing into something unreadable. For a heartbeat, Luca froze, torn between running to him and disappearing into the crowd. But before he could decide, Matteo turned and walked away. The distance between them had never felt wider. The following dawn, Luca stood on the edge of the harbor, watching the boats drift out to sea. Elias joined him, silent for a while, then spoke. "You carry a weight heavier than these nets. But listen, boy. The sea does not ask where you come from. It only asks how strong you hold on." Luca nodded, his chest tight with emotion. He realized then that he could not change his father's heart, nor erase the pain of rejection. But he could choose where to anchor his own. Behind him, Maria called out for breakfast. Elena's laughter floated through the morning air. And in that moment, Luca understood. Family was not always the one you were born into. Family was the harbor that sheltered you when every other shore turned you away. And for the first time since the night he was cast out, Luca no longer felt adrift. He was home.